As we all know by now, one of the difficulties of attachment trauma or complex trauma is regulation of emotion. So it's not uncommon for me to have a couple in my office and we're discussing difficult emotional things and one partner becomes dysregulated. Or even they might go into a panic attack in the consulting room right there. When this happens, it's very important that I stop the session and I help this partner re-regulate so they can engage and learn more about what happened inside them that triggered their emotions. Where did they go? How did they become dysregulated? What were the associated meanings with what that person was saying and with what they were feeling? Was there any avoidance going on of a particular emotion that they just went all into panic or anxiety in that moment? And so that they can really begin to learn and get a hold of ways to re-regulate themselves. So today we're going to discuss the top 3 grounding techniques to help with emotion regulation. Welcome to Trauma-Free Relationship. I'm Tom Philp, your host, and as a therapist, I've spent over 10,000 hours helping couples work through their trauma so they can repair ruptures, heal their wounds, and communicate from a place of wholeness and connection. Let's get started. Okay, as you heard me mention in the opening, it's not uncommon for me to have couples in my consulting room where one partner gets triggered and they begin to quickly dysregulate. That could be that they go into fight or flight and you become very upset. I've certainly had people walk out before because they're so upset with what's happening in that moment. I've had them go into panic attacks before where we've had to be able to re-regulate them in order for them to finish the session. And then certainly I've had people go into hypo-dysregulation where they sort of just freeze up, they can't think of anything, or they feel like they begin to disassociate and aren't really there. And all of the related disassociations that can happen as well, sort of out-of-body experiences, that kind of thing. And so it is not uncommon that people with trauma really struggle to regulate their emotions. So I wanted to share with you 3 of the best techniques that I've learned and that I use regularly with my clients in order to help with emotion regulation. This is so very important because we know that dysregulation is one of the challenges with complex trauma. That window of tolerance, meaning the window in which we can feel calm, confident, collected, we can use all of our brain, including our executive functioning, right there behind the forehead. We can integrate our emotions with our thoughts, our cognitions, and we can make meaning of our experiences. When we stay within that window, we can stay regulated, and all those things can coalesce into what feels like a unified self, where we can use our feelings as information to then be able to act on and express our wants and our needs, to have goals and plans and strive for success in our life and in our relationships. So those are all the benefits from being regulated and staying in that window of tolerance, as Dan Siegel likes to call it. When we pop out of that window, either above and we hyper regulate, meaning we go into fight or flight, or we hypo-dysregulate, where we go down and we freeze, then we're outside that window, and life becomes more difficult. One of the things we know with trauma is that it actually shrinks that window. It makes the window smaller by default. So our original programming doesn't come with as wide a window as it used to. It's now a smaller window, and that's sort of the set operating procedures, if you will, built inside of us after we've suffered with complex trauma. And so being able to re-regulate ourselves, being able to have techniques, grounding techniques, so that when we feel ourselves starting to dysregulate, it's really important to have those in our back pocket to know what to be able to do. Because if we don't, if we become dysregulated, then we just get overtaken by sheer emotions, and not a lot of positive things are going to happen for us or in our relationship when those occur. So grounding techniques are really important skills for persons with trauma, because grounding strategies, as I've said, help a person who is overwhelmed by memories or strong emotions or is disassociating, and they can help a person become aware of the here and now. Remember, part of dysregulation is overwhelming memories, flashbacks, if you will, or completely becoming dysregulated or disassociating. It's taking you back to the original trauma. What was happening for you during the original trauma? It's not currently happening, but in that moment, your brain can't tell the difference. By using these grounding techniques, what you do is you begin to pull yourself back to the here and now, which is all about a healing approach for trauma, because it's not what happened then, it's what it's still doing to you now that's causing problems and difficulties in your life. So these grounding techniques literally help ground you in the here and now. They can pull your focus back, they can re-regulate you, and they can help you focus more and achieve more and accomplish more in your life and in your relationships by keeping you focused on the here and the now. So one of the very first ones I want to talk about is what they call the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. So it goes like this: identify 5 things you can see around you. Name 4 things you can touch. Listen to 3 sounds. Smell 2 things. Taste 1 thing. So you don't have to do all of these, but if you think about an easy technique to use, this is certainly one of them. You don't have to have anything with you. You can just simply remember 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What are 5 things I can see around me right now? Well, I can see the outlets on the wall. I can see a bookshelf with books on it. I can see a table with papers on it. I can see a box in the corner, and so on and so forth. So you just begin naming 5 things around you. Okay, 4 things I can touch. I can touch my shirt. I can touch my pants. I can touch the desk. I can touch the carpet or the hardwoods underneath my feet. So what are 4 things that you can touch? What are 3 things or sounds that I can hear? Well, I can hear birds chirping out the window. I can hear the air conditioning running in the room I'm in. I can hear people talking 3 doors down. What are 2 things I can smell? I can smell a sweet aroma in the air, or I can smell sort of a stench that doesn't actually smell too appealing, or what, especially with smell, that can really draw you to the here and now focus. So what are 2 things you can smell? And finally, what's 1 thing I can touch or taste? Excuse me. 1 thing you can taste. Well, I can taste sort of the roof of my mouth and the coffee I had this morning, or the hot chocolate, or the tea, or I can taste a little bit of a metallic taste in my mouth right now because I just feel so dysregulated. All these things can bring you back into the moment, which is totally what re-regulation is about, getting you back into the window of tolerance. So that's it, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. Now, here's a couple of others, and these are deep breathing exercises. One of them is the diaphragmatic breathing, where you place one hand on your chest and the other on your stomach. You inhale slowly through your nose, filling your belly first and then your chest, and then you exhale slowly through your mouth. So you should feel the hand that's on your stomach it should sort of expand out first, and then your chest as you're breathing through your nose, and then you exhale slowly through your mouth. So and you do that over and over until you can sort of begin to re-regulate yourself. That's called diaphragmatic breathing. And that's really important as well, because oftentimes what happens is when we dysregulate, we start taking very short, shallow breaths all from our chest. And so what happens is we're not getting the oxygen intake we really need, because real deep breathing happens from your diaphragm. It happens from your stomach. And when we breathe in through our nose, our nostril, and expand our belly, then we're getting plenty of oxygen that is actually helping with our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And then as we exhale, it turns on our parasympathetic nervous system that begins to really relax us. And so it's really important to be able to have some deep breathing at times to help re-regulate yourself. Another one is called the 4-7-8 breathing. So this one is where you inhale and count to 4, you hold for the count of 7, and you exhale for 8. So inhale to the count of 4, you hold your breath for the count of 7, and then exhale for 8. And I'll try this. It may not translate well on a podcast, but I think you get the idea of what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to inhale for a count of 4. So I held it for 7, and then I exhaled for close to 8. And so if you do that a few times, that can really help re-regulate you as well. So that's another breathing exercise that can really help re-regulate you. That was called the 4-7-8 breathing. And then finally, another one that I use a lot is what we call a grounding objects exercise. And this is where you touch a grounding object. It could be a rock that you carry in your pocket. It could be something else you have with you that you find is smoothing. I've had people that have run their fingers along the seams of their clothing, because that is a grounding technique for them, a soothing thing to do when they start to become more upset or dysregulated. So any of those things work as well. One I use a lot is where I have the person, the partner, just simply rub their hands on their thighs and feel the texture of their pants, or if they're wearing shorts, their legs. And I have them shift their focus to the warmth of being able to rub their hands on their thighs. Notice how it starts warming up. Notice how you begin to feel the texture of your pants. Are they feeling rough? Are they feeling smooth? Are you running your hand over any creases in your pants or your shorts? Notice how your legs are beginning to feel. Can you feel your feet on the bottom of the floor? Can you feel the soles of your feet touching the floor? Can you draw your attention to that? And so that's one I use a lot, and I just ask them simply to breathe and focus on my voice and nothing else. And so I usually drop my voice. It's a little bit more calm, a little more soothing, and I'll talk to them in very sort of placid tones, hopefully. And as they're feeling their thighs and as they're breathing, they can quickly begin to re-regulate themselves. So that's certainly one I use a lot. And again, you could have your favorite little stone that you have and play with in your pocket, something like that. Could be a car key. I mean, in any sort of texture or object that you can touch can be a grounding technique for you. I remember years ago here in the United States, all the rage was something called fidget spinners. And these little spinners, they had a center wheel, and then they had this little spinner that you could hold on to the center and spin this little wheel around. And it was oftentimes this little tri-pronged object. And all the kids used to love these things. And they were really meant for kids that maybe had attention deficit disorder or hyperactivity disorder, a way to sort of give them something to focus on. That dual focus really helps kids with ADD. And so, and unfortunately, it spread to, all the kids wanting them. So they ended up banning them here in the schools. But that was sort of a grounding technique as well. And so you could just hold on to the center and spin this little wheel around. And just the sheer motion of that was something that was calming. And so you could even see that as a grounding technique of sorts that a lot of kids were using for a long time until it got so popular that it got banned, unfortunately, in the schools. You don't see them much anymore these days, but boy, they were sure popular for a couple of years. And so that's just another example of a grounding technique that can really be helpful. So today I've gone through 3 of the most important grounding techniques that I use regularly, that I use not only for myself, but I certainly use for my couples and individuals that I see. Feel free to adapt any of these that I talk about and make them your own. This doesn't have to be exactly as I've done it, or you can use these in combination. You can use the deep breathing, the 6, 7, 8 exercise of deep breathing. If you want, in conjunction with the grounding exercise, that could be very effective for you. Excuse me, I misspoke. It's the 4, 7, 8 breathing exercise in conjunction with the grounding exercise. So you could do the 4, 7, 8 breathing while you're also drawing your attention and to your hands that are rubbing your thighs, or to your feet that is firmly placed on the ground. So you can use these in combination as well. But I think having some of these tools that you utilize on a regular basis and you practice are very important. What you don't want to do is try to pull one of these out at the last moment that you haven't really practiced very well. So choose one of these that you feel works. Begin practicing it on a daily basis. It doesn't have to be more than about 3 to 5 minutes. You could do it in the car before you walk into the office or walk into your home or wherever you might be. Just take a few moments, practice these, because when you do get triggered and you begin to dysregulate, you want to be able to have these, and you want it to be sort of automatic enough that you have confidence that it's going to begin to work. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Please continue to give me feedback. Let me know more of what you'd really like to hear. But as always, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to Trauma-Free Relationship, a podcast for the healing of attachment trauma. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or our website at traumafreerelationship.com. Be sure to look for our next episode on your favorite streaming service.